Right now it's 68.
Jim Walsh keeps it live and local weekday mornings on SuperTalk 1270.
I can't believe there are still people worked up over the fact they called off the parade on Friday. Now, if you're one of those people, please do the rest of us a favor, okay? Get over it. Move on. Get on with your life. Please. You're making a fool of yourself here. 663-1270. Jim Walsh. That would be me on SuperTalk 1270. Love to hear from you. Be talking about the bullying, anti-bullying project a little bit later on today. That's back in the news. I'm going to give you my take on the subject. And in the meantime, yeah, there are people who are still all worked up and making a big fuss here. They got their panties in a knot, if you will, over the fact that this past Friday, the annual Independence Day parade in Mandan was canceled. Not postponed, but canceled. Now, let me give you the story behind the story here. The co-chair of the parade, Marlo Anderson, one of the decision makers behind the process, I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but I am going to defend his decision. And this is my personal opinion on the subject. He was right to do what he did for the reasons he did it. And I know one of the biggest questions, and we also have an article on the subject on the website you can check out at supertalk1270.com. One of the biggest questions on people's minds was why the parade was canceled this year instead of being postponed like last year. And what happened was Mr. Anderson and some of the other folks, they apparently evaluated the radar. They did see some breaks in the weather, but not really enough of a break to accommodate the size of the parade. The parade was like four miles long in its entirety. And he said, we did consider postponing, but in looking at the radar, we did not see a 3-hour window where we could fit the parade in. Realistically, we need about 3 hours to get the parade in. The worst case scenario would have been to have a thunderstorm with lightning move in right in the middle of the parade, putting people in danger. Now, this was not something that was done on a lark. In addition to Mr. Anderson, some of the other people, we had the co-chair, Dennis Freeze, emergency management officials, the fire chief of Mandan, the weather service. They all had a part in making the call on this. And as we understand it, around 9:30 Friday morning, Marlo was in touch with the Morton County Emergency Management, and they notified him of reports of rain and pea-sized hail to the west of Mandan with a potential for lightning. The lightning was, of course, the big thing. And they made some follow-up calls, and it indicated, quote unquote, a serious potential for lightning, which included 15 strikes every 5 minutes. Now, you think about this, a 4-mile-long parade, marching in weather with lightning, 15 strikes every 5 minutes to the ground. Those numbers are not very good. Those numbers are not encouraging if you want to talk about safety. And again, the reason they canceled it rather than postpone was quite simple. If you postpone the parade, what happens? Well, people just pretty much hang around and wait for the parade to get started again. They didn't want that to happen, so they said, okay, we're done. No parade. Everybody go home. And there were a lot of people who were upset about that. People working on their little projects, on their floats or whatever. But, you know, this kind of goes with the territory. When you're dealing with something like Ma Nature, especially in this part of the country, where if you don't like the weather, you can wait 5 minutes, but, okay, it's not always that simple. You know how the weather is, especially in the summertime. there's always that risk that something like this is bound to happen. When it does, what do? Well, I'm not saying you can't be disappointed, but at some point you got to kind of shrug and move on with it. Get on with your life. I tell you what, if you got a float from the other day that's still sitting around in your driveway, go ahead and give me a call or drop me a line on the website, and I'll drive by your house and admire it from afar. Okay? So it will not have been a total waste. I mean, it was not a total waste anyway, because you probably had a lot of fun, the effort you put into it, and that's the big part of it, right? If anything, it's like preparing for a football game. You know, once you actually play the game, it's kind of an anticlimax. All the real fun and challenge is in getting the thing ready for it. And if there is no parade, it can be kind of a letdown, but it shouldn't be. You know what I mean? I think you do. All right. Number here is 663-1270. Now, we understand that they did address the possibility of the weather clearing up once they made the call to cancel the parade. But they said the safety of the parade goers was the paramount issue. I mean, you gotta be fair about this. If they had gone on with the parade and something had happened, who was going to get blamed for that? Whose lap? Where was the buck going to stop on that one, Harry Truman? Well, I think we all know who would have gotten blamed for that. I think we all know where the buck would have stopped. The committee will evaluate the financial ramifications for all involved due to I don't know, do they have insurance for something like that? That just now occurred to me. Is there such a thing as insurance for cancellation of a parade? Maybe there should be. Anyway, the committee had to make a decision based on the information that was available to them at the time. They took their shot. Please, everybody live with it, okay? It's done. You keep saying, when's the parade going to be rescheduled? The parade is rescheduled for July 4th of next year, okay? So let's all move on with our lives. Like I say, if you want me to drive by and ogle your your float there that you made for it, I certainly will be happy to do so. I'll even wave at you from the car. I won't stop the car, but I'll wave at you. All right. Yeah, I mean, I can understand some people be disappointed and some people might be angry for a few minutes. But again, this decision, in my personal opinion, the right decision for the safety of the community, they were concerned about the safety. And you always got to err on the side of the money in these cases. Okay, maybe that's not the right way to put it. If you err on the side of the money, you probably go on with the parade. No, you're going to err on the side of the public safety. So if you're a member of the public and you're still ticked off about it, please do us all a favor and get over it. And get over yourself. Thank you. And let's all move on, please. Thank you. I have a little parade on the radio here. Little theater of the mind thing going on for you this morning. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270 and SuperTalk1270.com. Coming up, we're going to talk about the bullying project, all the efforts to stop bullying and deal with bullying and why they don't work and what will work. Well, I have an answer for you. Of course I do. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes here. Hang in there.
Right now, 72.
You're never more than a few minutes from a weather update here on SuperTalk 1270.
Yeah, pot is legal in Washington State today.
Skies you've ever seen are in Seattle.
Yeah, especially now, apparently.
And the hills the greenest green in Seattle.
Whoa, man, look at the colors.
Like
Wow.
a beautiful child growing up free and wild. Full of hopes and full of fears. Full of laughter, full of tears. Full of dreams to last the years in Seattle.
Pot is now legal in Washington State. And, of course, you know they're celebrating in Seattle today. The bluest skies you've ever seen are in Seattle. Seattle, of course, Seattle, Washington, where the skies are blue for almost 20, 30 days out of the year. The rest of the time, basically, I've been told Seattle has two seasons. You got your cold rain in the winter and your warm rain in the summertime. Nonetheless, I suppose I wonder if Perry Como ever fired one up. I mean, he was Mr. Relaxation after all. He was Mr. Mellow. He was Mr. Laid Back and Relaxed, you know. Who was it? It was not Saturday Night Live. It was the one with John Candy, Second City. They did a great bit about Perry Como doing songs like Kool and the Gang Celebrate and I Love the Nightlife, I Love the Book. And he was very relaxed, of course. Basically, he was prone on the floor singing into the microphone. It was very funny. Anyway, all right, Jim Walsh here on Super Talk 1270. Bullying, how to deal with bullying. Nothing you have been told about dealing with bullying is going to work. You know what's going to work? You can eliminate bullying, but what you can do is make sure that your kids are not a high priority target. Yeah, it means somebody else's kids will be, but you do what you got to do. All right. God, I know that sounds terrible, doesn't it? It's social Darwinism. No, it's the real world. Number here is 663-1270. We also have an article related to this that is posted on the website. You can check it out for yourself later and comment at supertalk1270.com. Bullying, nationwide issue, of course, but apparently they're saying now that North Dakota, good old North Dakota, has produced higher numbers than the national average for students who are bullied both online and on school grounds. And this is the part of it that intrigues me because they're talking primarily about students in the high school level. Now, when I was in junior high, when I was in elementary school, especially right around the 6th and 7th grades, those were probably the worst as far as bullying was concerned. And I don't think it's a coinkydink that those were also the times when adolescence and the hormones were kicking in big time for most of us. The girls were starting to, bloom a little bit. The guys were all starting to go through puberty and starting to get those deep voices that we all now have. Well, a lot of us have. And we all started getting hair growing in places where we never really expected it to grow. And that was also the time when bullying was probably at its high point or low point, depending on how you want to look at it. Well, here's the stat for you. Over 10,000 North Dakota high school students participated. 25% of the students who participated admitted to being bullied on school property. And 17% said they were bullied online. Well, let's eliminate the online thing. That's kind of a fuzzy area to me. Let's talk specifically about being bullied in person on school property. And again, the point I wanted to make about high school is that my own experience was I was bullied just like anyone, I guess, maybe a little more so because I was a shy kid. But by the time I got to high school, I'd say there was a little bit in the freshman year, but by the time you got beyond that, because freshmen, they always kind of feel the need to test you a little bit, to make you run the gauntlet to show your worth. It's these social rituals that are such cocky duty that they make you go through at that age. But having gotten past that, I would say the worst years were 6th and 7th grades. And beyond that, it got a lot better. Those public service things they do, it gets better. Well, it does get better. Once you get into high school, especially once you're past being a freshman, I don't remember being bullied at all once I got past being a freshman in high school. Never happened. My experience was once you get to high school, everybody's starting to look ahead. Everybody's, the hormones have been raging for a while now. Everybody's starting to calm down. Everybody's starting to get used to the adult thing. And we're starting to think in terms of, well, we got college. Some of us are going to go straight to work. Some of us in the family business. There were a lot of class clowns in high school, but there was still a feeling that, okay, maybe now it's time to just kind of start to think about getting serious about stuff. So, no, bullying to me was not even an issue in high school. Maybe to some people it was. To me, it wasn't. And I'm inclined to think it wasn't much of an issue at all, because if I wasn't being bullied, then nobody was being bullied. I was one of those low-hanging fruit kind of guys. You know what I mean? Again, that came out so totally wrong, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. Anyway, 25% of the students who participated in this survey admitted to being bullied on school property. 11% said they had attempted suicide in the last year. I don't know about that. I tend to be very skeptical when I hear figures like that, 11% attempting suicide. Knowing the way we used to think about these things in high school, my guess is a lot of kids said that just to kind of shock everybody. It's like when I was a freshman in school and they said 94% of the student body smokes marijuana. Who told them that? Well, the kids did. Well, of course the kids are going to tell you that. They're not going to say they don't. There's nothing shocking in that. They want to shock the adults. They want to scare them. That's what kids do, you know. Kids don't have a lot of power, so they kind of flex it where they got it, you know. And one way is you give these facts out that shock people. Anyway, so supposedly now we're saying that approximately a quarter of all the students, high school students, as represented by the kids in this survey, have been bullied on school property. New survey is done every 2 years. And, of course, you've got all the stop bullying websites. You've got them for North Dakota. You've got them for the country at large. Every state has their own version of it. And there's all kinds of studies out, psychiatric journals, psychology journals, sociology journals. You know, all the people who graduated with degrees that nobody ever told them they can make a living with. So they apparently found a way to make a living by putting out these studies. Childhood bullying having negative effects on a person's adult life. Gee, you think? You think getting beat up once or twice every week in junior high school might kind of put a little twist on your outlook on life? No. Well, anyway. Although I must say, I came out okay. You know, like I say, I was probably bullied as much as anybody because I was one of those kids who kind of, I was a bully magnet, so to speak. I was just one of those shy kids who was afraid of his own shadow. So I got it a lot at a certain point in my schooling, and then it stopped, and it was never a problem again, and I put it behind me. A lot of those kids that I fought with and had issues with, a lot of them as adults, they're very good friends of mine, and they're great people. I think it's just something that people have to go through. Bullying as well, let me just say it. You're never going to get rid of bullying in this society. It seems to go with the territory of coming of age. It seems to be part of dealing with the changes that you go through when you're an adolescent, physical and psychological. Some kids at that age, every kid at that age is kind of screwed up. Every kid is going through weird stuff. And some of the kids who go through weird stuff, the way they channel their insecurities and their fears is by bullying other kids. Now, I never said this was a good thing, but I'm saying it's the real world. What I'm saying is you are never going to get rid of bullying. Bullying is never going to go away. It's hardwired into the human psyche that a certain time in your life, and there are plenty of adult bullies too, but for most of us, for the majority of people, at least the majority of people that I know in my little corner of the world, bullying is something you associate with youth and adolescence. When you're kids, and then when you're like young teenagers. By the time you're older teenagers, most of us have moved on. We're getting ready for adulthood. We're kind of starting to get our ducks in a row here. But bullying is never going to go away. There's always going to be a certain element of society who is going to want to bully a certain other element, especially among the, especially among that, Yeah, especially among the age with Nelson and Bart Simpson and those kids, okay? Well, Bart was never really a bully. It was Nelson, right? Nelson is the bully. Yeah, and there he is. History's been full of Nelsons, right? I imagine there's probably some guy standing on the grassy knoll that day as the motorcade went by and he was going, yeah, well, we do have bullies, and we're always going to have bullies. So how do you deal with bullies? I've got my own opinion on the subject, and no, I'm not a psychologist. Of course, neither is Dr. Laura. Never stopped her. But anyway, we'll get to that in just a few minutes. So I want to get your opinion as well on the subject and how you deal with the bullying issue. At 663-1270, more conversation, your calls coming up. Remember, we have a lot of fun here, but it's even better when you participate. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270, with more conversation coming up.
Right now, 72.
Get the traffic and weather information you need anytime on SuperTalk 1270 and online at supertalk1270.com.
Every morning, 10 times, not just now and then.
What is your major
Give that
malfunction?
chicken fat back to the chicken and don't be chicken again. No, don't be chicken again. Push up every morning, 10 times push up, starting low. Once more on the rise, nuts to the flabby guys. Go, you chicken fat, go away. Go away. Go, you chicken fat, go.
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
Robert Preston. They actually used the same orchestra they were using for The Music Man, the movie. And Meredith Willson, the guy who wrote all the songs for The Music Man, he wrote that. That was part of the President's Council, President's Council of Physical Fitness during the JFK administration. The JFK, of course, was very big on the physical fitness thing. And that kind of ties in what we're talking about here. We're talking about bullying, how you deal with bullying. I'm going to tell you, you're never going to rid the world of bullying. Bullying's always going to be here. So what do you do? As a parent, what can you do then? Well, what you can do, realistically, is see to it that your kid is not one of the kids likely to be bullied. And I know that sounds terrible to say that. People use phrases like social Darwinism, dog eat dog. I'm just saying, that's the way of the world. I mean, it's like dealing with a crime issue. You know, there's an old joke about two guys walking in the jungle. Who knows why? And this tiger comes out and starts chasing these guys. And one of the guys actually stops and he says, I'm going to change my shoes. I'm going to put on my running shoes. And the other guy says, running shoes? You can't outrun a tiger. And the other guy says, I don't have to outrun the tiger. I just have to outrun you. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here. You can't get rid of bullying. It's always going to be there. It's part of human nature that some people are going to want to bully, especially at the elementary and junior high school levels. It's probably worst around 6th or 7th grades. But here's what you can do. If you're a parent, what you can do is make sure that your kid is not one of the ones most likely to be bullied. It's like dealing with a crime issue. If you live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of crime, well, there's probably not a lot you can do about the crime as a whole. What you can do is make it a lot less likely that you'll be the house or that it'll be your car or your family that will be singled out and targeted for crime. How do you do? Oh, what am I talking about? Well, I mean, criminals, and this applies to bullies too. Bullies are by nature very insecure people themselves. They go after the low-hanging fruit. So if you're one of these low-hanging, fruity kids, so to speak, you're going to be more likely to be bullied. You want to be less likely to be bullied, you got to be one of those kids who really walks around like he owns a damn place. Like he's really in control of himself and confident with himself. And that's not something you can fake. It takes a long time to build that up in any person, a child or adult. I'm not convinced that you can really fake it. We all know when somebody's faking that kind of thing because they look ridiculous. They look like Barney Fife. And we can also look at somebody and know when they really do feel good about themselves and they really feel confident. And they're the kind of people that if you throw a zinger at them, it's just going to bounce right off them and not make any impact whatsoever. So what I'm saying is, you cannot stop bullying in this society. It's ridiculous to even make the effort. It's a waste of time. What you can do is make your kids confident. Do things with your kids that will encourage them to be confident about themselves. Exercising is one, getting involved in sports, getting them to build up their skills in sports and physical things that will make them more confident in themselves. I'm not talking about the new wave self-esteem stuff necessarily. You don't stand in front of a mirror and go, doggone it, I like myself. The old, what's his name? The guy who's now the senator in Minnesota. Stuart Smalley. You don't do the Stuart Smalley thing. You build self-confidence by doing real stuff, by giving the kids challenges. They will fail to meet the challenges, but then they'll come back and they'll succeed because they'll work up to it, and then they'll feel better about themselves. This is especially good. It's especially good to do this with sports, because when you're a kid, of course, sports is an important thing. And what you got to do, martial arts. Yeah, martial arts, I guess, is another one. I'm kind of skeptical about the good thing about martial arts, if you have a good instructor, is they believe in that whole self-esteem thing very strongly, and that they will teach the kids self-discipline and how to handle himself. And again, you'll get the real kind of self-discipline and self-esteem, not the phony kind, not the Stuart Smalley crap. And that's what you got to do for your kids. If you want your kids to be, and we're talking realistically here, you want them to be less likely to be bullied, then you've got to make them the kind of kid that the bullies are going to pass over for somebody else. And when I talk about this issue, people just think that's terrible. And again, crime in general, the same thing. Some guys looking to do a smash and grab in a car, smash a window, grab stuff on the front seat. If you don't have anything valuable on your front seat, or if you have an obvious alarm system in your car, and the bad guy comes up to your car and sees that, what's the bad guy going to do? He's probably going to go look for an easier mark. He's probably going to go look for a car that does have something valuable on the seat. And maybe it's a car that he looks like it's a crappy car. There's obviously no alarm system. This would be an easier mark than that other car. It works with houses. It works with people. My first year in college, one of my dorm mates, not my roommate, but he lived a couple doors down. It's a kid named, a wonderful Jewish kid named Mickey from New York City. And I say, and this is the mid-'70s when you're hearing all about what a terrible place to live New York had supposedly become. You look at film clips of New York from that period. It looks like some kind of urban exploitation film, or like the movie Death Wish or something like that. And I got talking to Mickey about this. He says, well, a lot of it's blown out of proportion, but yeah, there is crime. Any major city, you're going to have crime. He said it's basically all in how you handle yourself. It's a matter of, you walk down the street like you own it. You walk down the street, you just kind of give off that air of, not a belligerent air, not a, hey, you want to fight? Not an air like that, but more an air of, hey, I don't want to mess with this guy because he knows what he's about. I'm going to go for something, for an easier mark. The lower hanging fruit, as I like to say. So, you definitely don't want your kids to be the lower hanging fruit. That, of course, means that somebody else's kids probably will be, but, again, you do what you can in this society. Unfortunately, that is the way the world works. If you don't like it, well, if you can come up with a better solution, more power to you. But I have yet to hear one. And I've certainly not heard anything really productive from these sociological groups that want to wipe out bullying in your lifetime. You're not going to wipe out anything in your lifetime. You're not going to wipe out bullying. It's not going to go away. It's part of human nature. You're not going to get rid of it. It's always going to be there. What you've got to do is make sure that your kids are not the low-hanging fruit that the bullies are going to go for. You want it so that when the bully comes up and sees your kid and thinks, I want to mess with this guy. And then the bully looks at your kid and goes, I don't want to mess with him. He'd be too much of a hassle. I'll go mess with this other guy. That's what you want with your kid. You want your kid not to be the guy that the bully is going to mess with. Does that sound like I'm being crass? Does that sound like I'm being inhuman? Perhaps. But it's the world we live in today. 663-1270. I'd love to get your comments on this. 663-1270. Yeah, supposedly, and I'm always a little skeptical of the statistics that come out. There are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. And there was a line from Shakespeare, the devil can cite scripture to suit his own purpose. That was, I think, from The Merchant of Venice, I think. Anyway, but it's a great line. I always think of that whenever I look at somebody's statistics about things. And the stats we have here, 25% of high school students who participated in this one particular survey, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 25% say, yeah, we were bullied on school property. Well, okay, yeah. I mean, on a grade school level, they probably were, because there was a lot of it, because kids are screwed up in the head just by nature of being kids, and they're always kind of finding their way socially. They're always going to be pecking orders in society, including, look, we're talking Lord of the Flies here. We're talking the dark side of human nature. All I'm saying is you've got to acknowledge that dark side if you're going to know how to deal with it. You want to protect your kids from bullying? Well, stop pretending that you're ever going to get rid of the problem. That's the first step. All right. 663-1270. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270 with more conversation and your calls coming up. I'll beat you up if you don't, man.
Right now, 72.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own SuperTalk 1270.
How politically correct can you get?
That famous day in history, the men of the 7th Cavalry went fighting on.
Is your major malfunction?
And from the rear a voice was heard, a brave young man with a trembling word rang loud and clear.
What am I doing here? Please, Mr. Custer, I don't want to go.
I had to play this for the folks at Fort Lincoln because we're
Mr. Custer,
we're doing that thing with them.
Please don't make me go. I had a dream last night about the coming fight. Somebody yelled attack, and there I stood with the arrow in my back.
Ooh.
Please, Mr. Custer, I don't want to go.
Well, there had to be at least one guy in that whole group of the 7th Cavalry who was thinking exactly that. Just saying. All right. Jim Walsh here on SuperTalk 1270. A note here. Remember the other day, you might have heard this if you're a regular listener, and if you're not, you should be. Metamucil helps, by the way, the occasional bran muffin. But no, seriously. There's a lot of things, if you miss a little, you miss a lot. That's what we like to say about this radio station. And we have a new feature called Sound Off, which we do, every few days. We basically have a little editorial commentary. I've done a few of them. Some other folks will be doing them as well. But we talked about the Hobby Lobby thing last week, all right? And I got a note from an acquaintance of mine, a fellow named Jim in Fargo. Jim in Fargo writes, I disagree with the recent Supreme Court ruling for Hobby Lobby based on the fact that some employees were being unfairly singled out based on their sex, and that some companies had to provide benefits where other companies do not. But, he writes, 3 buts in a row there. Here is my big question. Why does an employer have to provide benefits in the first place? The employer not only needs to get his own benefits, but pay for every employee's insurance as well. Maybe in the country of personal responsibility, everyone should pay their own way. Or better yet, he says, pay for it out of their taxes in a single-payer system. I don't agree with that, by the way. He continues, why burden the employer with the cost of someone's insurance and allow them to discriminate for the convenient excuse of religious beliefs? Well, of course, one very obvious answer in my mind is that whether you realize it or not, you are paying for your own health care. It's coming out of your pocket. Whether you care to acknowledge it or not, it's all a matter of, shall we say, creative accounting. That money's coming out of your pocket. Maybe not on paper, but in reality, when they hire you, they factor all this in. And, when they're best you can hope for is a copay where you at least don't have to pay for all of it. But let's face it. When they say, well, we're going to pay half and you're going to pay half. Well, that's great, but let's face it. You're paying all of it. You are. Let's be, accounting was never my strong suit in college. It was my kryptonite, but that much I did learn about the fine art of counting people's money, right? You're paying for it. You're already paying for it. But you think you're not. That's the problem. Anyway, Playboy magazine this month. I haven't read Playboy in years. I'm not saying I don't look at the pictures, but I haven't read Playboy. That was a joke. I haven't read Playboy in a long time, just haven't picked one up. But this month, they're doing an interview with one of my favorite actors, Gary Oldman. You've seen him in a lot of movies. He was in the more recent run of Batman movies where he played Commissioner Gordon. Damn fine actor. He was in, a lot of people remember him for JFK, the Oliver Stone flick, where he played Lee Harvey Oswald. Of course, his best moment in that whole film, I thought, was when Ruby shot him, and he just had that look on his face that was perfect. Exactly the look that Oswald probably had on his face. That one famous picture, where he's grimacing and bending over. Gary Oldman captured that beautifully. But seriously, Gary Oldman interviewed in Playboy this month. And it's also available online, if you don't want to be seen carrying Playboy around for some reason. I don't know why it don't be a problem. Come on. We're all adults here. You can read whatever the hell you want. It's a free country. But Gary Oldman is taking some flack for some comments he made about people like Mel Gibson. He mentioned Mel Gibson. He mentioned Alec Baldwin. Both these guys apparently are friends of his. And specifically with Mel Gibson, he said, well, they asked him, they said, what do you think about what Mel has been going through these past few years? And Oldman's reply, and I love this, they have in parentheses, fidgets in his seat. Okay, just to make the point. He says, I just think political correctness is crap. It's like, take a bleeping joke, get over it. Skipping down here, there's a lot of boring stuff. No one can take a joke anymore. I don't know about Mel. He got drunk and said a few things, but we've all said those things, and we're all hypocrites. That's what I think about it. The policeman arrested him has never used the N-word, or that bleeping Jew, that word. He said, I'm being brutally honest here. It's the hypocrisy of it that drives me crazy. Or maybe I should strike that and say the N-word and the F-word. Well, there's 2 F-words now. Okay. There's the 3-letter one. And he goes on about Alec Baldwin calling someone an F-A-G in the street. He did that, by the way. He spelled it out. I don't blame him. They persecute Mel Gibson in a town that's run by Jews. His words. And he said the wrong thing because he's actually bitten the hand that I guess has fed him. And he doesn't need to feed him anymore, but he's got enough dough. He's like an outcast. He's a leper. Here's where it gets really good, okay? Again, we're quoting here from Gary Oldman. But some Jewish guy in his office somewhere hasn't turned and said, that bleeping kraut, or F those Germans, whatever it is. We all hide and try to be so politically correct. That's what gets me. It's just the sheer hypocrisy of everyone that we all stand on this thing going, oh, isn't that shocking? And then he goes on about the Pope. But we'll stop right at that point. Now, I was interested to read this. I love Gary Oldman as an actor. But again, when you talk about actors, you know, the thing about actors, most actors, not all of them, but definitely most of them, certainly a lot of them, and this applies to musicians as well, and radio and TV people, disc jockeys, talk show hosts, is once you get them off the air, once they stop doing the shtick, you know, once you take the actor's script away, they tend to be not particularly interesting people. Now, I got another comment here. This is from a family member regarding the Oldman interview, who says there might be a decent point to make on the subject. Like a lot of actors, take the script away, and Mr. Oldman's judgment appears to go out the window. Now, of course, you can make a case that, you know, the reason we need freedom of speech is, you know, freedom of speech is not to protect popular opinions. It's to protect the boorish, pissed-off jerks who test your limits and your patience. That's certainly the case here. And for the record, Mr. Oldman is very talented, so I guess the ultimate takeaway is definitely go see his movies, but pray that he never sits next to you on the crosstown bus. What else do we have time? Oh, wow, we are out of time. Go figure. Oh, are we going to have the parade again? Okay. All right, the parade was called off on Friday, so we're going to have our little parade on the radio here. Just to imagine everybody, theater of the mind, if you will. Just kind of picture in your mind's eye the parade going by. Probably not a good idea if you're driving, though. Oh, Sarah Palin wants to be on The View. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. I'm all for it. Put her on The View. Put Rosie back on with her. That'd be a good pair. And give them boxing gloves or baseball bats. Let them slug it out. They can both do the world a big favor there. All right. Your comments welcome. SuperTalk1270.com. Jim Walsh for SuperTalk 1270. Have a good one. Thanks again for listening.